This is Pam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Rob Tracz. He's a guy guides entrepreneurs to look good, feel good, and do great things. And do you have a book that's unlocking your full potential? The six principles to elevate your life and business.
Not a book, but that's a whole program and
That's the
how to
program.
get things rolling. Yeah.
Cool. So I want to again thank you for being on the show. So one of the things we ask anybody that's on the program, the first couple of questions we ever ask is basically like what motivates you and why do you do what you do?
Well, first, I want to thank you for having me on, and I'm excited and pleasure to be on here, and I'm looking forward to having a good conversation. And what motivates me? So it's a pretty broad question, and to not give it too vague of an answer, I would say I would start off by saying just a lot of things, but more specifically, certain challenges, different challenges that I choose to take on to kind of build myself and like support friends, families, and then just that ever reaching and stepping forward. So I would say challenge um, and my social team.
So what made you want to get into being a mentor or life coach, that type of practice? What made you take this role in life?
Yeah, it was a pretty easy transition for me, given my background was in strength and conditioning. So think about think of like a personal trainer, but specifically for athletes. I
Hmm.
worked with athletes of different levels: semi-professional, ex-professional, high school, Division One, pretty much anything and everything you can kind of think of. And I was at a private sector sports performance facility, and it was really great because it gave me the freedom to kind of tip my toe into the entrepreneurial world of having the ability to create your own schedule and to kind of pick and choose certain clients and things like that. But on the flip end, it allowed me to dig myself a deep hole into burnout, and I wasn't paying attention because most people who are going through burnout, they can deny it, they'll push it off. No, it's not me. I can just grind. I'll sleep when I'm dead, kind of thing. And that became my life. I scaled up my schedule to 60, 70 hour work weeks. I did that for almost 3 years straight. Worked holidays. I missed out on big parties with friends. I missed out on a lot of different things. And it wasn't until my father passed away where I had continued to just bury myself down. And it wasn't until about a year and a half after my dad had passed where I was sitting on a Friday night by myself in my old apartment, dark as can be. It was cold, one of those like doomy, gloomy kind of situations where everybody else in the world was out either celebrating, it was a holiday weekend, or traveling with friends. But I was stuck home trying to fill my schedule.
Hmm.
um, Filling that schedule was a distraction for me. And when I was denied that full schedule, it gave me that second to kind of reflect on what my Friday nights had become. So before with my dad, it was like vibrant, like hanging out, live music, lots of friends, a lot of party action, kind of good times, genuine good times. And now it's just me sitting alone in this dark, damp, quiet apartment by myself. And I realized I love coaching, but I can't be I gotta get out of this. I gotta change something up. And that's really where my whole journey began. I took some message that my father shared with me on his deathbed, and that became the foundation for what my coaching program grew to become. Because I want to help other entrepreneurs who are kind of stuck or stagnant in their progress and help them kind of break through and grow. And I guess that also twofold answers your previous question about the motivation, just helping others avoid those mistakes that I had made in those times. That and I want to make sure people don't miss out on those situations and experiences that they will never get the opportunity to have again.
Do you believe like burnout is kind of an inevitable process of the idea that if you're an entrepreneur, you're supposed to suck it up. You're supposed to be like this, like in this kind of crazy alpha state where you've like you got to like sacrifice so much that you sacrifice too much. And I think people feel like, well, that's what you got to do. That's the price you pay for success. And I guess that in trying to understand like balance, because sometimes it's like if you get into this kind of state where you're trying to do this really hyper performance, it seems like, and a lot of musicians, we can get in that state too. We can like over practice, we
Mhm.
can overbook a tour, we can overbook our schedule, and then we do crazy amount of shows, do like 3 big shows in one day, and then do 3 shows the next day, and go to another country the next day. And like, should you really be doing that? You're gonna wreck your voice. You're gonna wreck your health. But you do it because your managers and your everybody on the, people working for you expect you to be doing that. So then you
Mhm.
get this expectation train, and then you don't know what to do because then suddenly other people are looking for you to be that guy.
Yeah, I believe that, and that certainly is true. And I don't think it necessarily needs to be like that. I think when individuals who are in certain situations like that, I think they're excited, they're driven, they want to keep going and pushing, and they want more of that because there's either more attention, more fame, more money, whatever it might be. That for the time being is worth sacrificing. But there becomes a period when enough is enough, and I think newer individuals to the grind, they lack the awareness of paying attention, and they lack the ability to draw the line in the sand saying like, hey, this is enough. So instead of three shows a day, or 10 sessions a day, it's okay, I'm going to cut myself off at like 1 or 2 a day, or I'm going to cut myself off at like 5 sessions or whatever. Or at least having that foresight to see like, hey, okay, this is going to be a sprint season. I'm going to book this many shows, but I'm going to make sure that there's a deadline, and I'm going to have a designated downtime after. I
Yeah.
think I think that's where the difference comes in.
But you gotta have kind of that mental health day,
Oh
like
yeah.
a lot of people feel like, but maybe they don't realize you do. Like a lot of times, sometimes you need, if you're a musician, you need silence. Like you need to not be in on that stage. Like you need
Mhm.
to be away from it. You need to be somewhere else. And sometimes there's like, there's expectations like, well, I need to be doing it. Even like a podcaster, I could be booking 8 shows a day, but then
Yeah.
my voice is gone. Maybe I should only do 2 a day or 3 a day. Maybe doing 8 or 10 a day. Yeah, to get the numbers to like be a big podcaster is like, well, no, you have to start thinking about balance. You know,
Mhm.
in anything, I think it's balance.
And I think in order to know where that balance is understanding yourself to a certain degree and making sure like, hey, what is that balance? Because your balance might be a little bit different than my balance, and there's many different variables that go into that balance. It's not just shows and like shows done and shows not done. There's tons of other things. There's like communication, there's like the rest of your schedule, the things that you're consuming outside of the media world, but like your meals and things like that too. There's a lot that goes into it. So
Yeah, well, it's like, if you think about it, everybody's got to have the legs of your stool, like the legs that are like part of the foundation of to a human being, like your mental health, your physical health, like your just your physical state, And so if your heart's not in it, you don't have a good mental state, you're not happy, if anything's out of balance, you can be in a situation. I ran into a guy, I was talking to a coach that had perfect like six-pack abs, perfect body condition, but his mental state wasn't there. Like he did
mhm,
not see that body in the mirror. And so people outside, they saw that he was in this perfect physical condition, but he wasn't good in his head. And so, like, sometimes you gotta have that kind of self-reflection or be able to talk to somebody else to
mhm.
actually say, like, where are you? Are you doing good?
Yeah. And if you don't have that ability to do that self-reflection yourself, that's why it's so important for me and a lot of my clients to make sure that you're surrounded with positive influences who can reel you back in. Like you were saying before, if you got a managers and other people who are pushing you, pushing you, and pushing you, Yeah, they have their agenda where they need to kind of make sure that things are coming through, but are they also taking into consideration, hey, maybe we are pushing him a little bit too much. Maybe we should kind of pump the brakes at least for a little bit to make sure that we can check in on the mental health.
Yeah, I think also there's like a stagnation thing that can happen. Like you can be too much on the hamster wheel. Like you're just on the road all the time. You could be a road warrior. You could be a
Mhm.
sales guy. You're just out trying to get those sales all the time. Like and you don't know when to like, you're gonna burn out. Like you can't be on the road forever, right? You have to kind of come off of the road to get off that road warrior mentality and
Mhm.
realize like there's like I guess he's like a musician. Like if we could be in a studio all day trying to do the same song and do like 100 takes of the same song, trying to get a sound, and we're not getting that sound. And there's like diminishing returns. It's like what's the point of doing take 101 when you really look at it the next day? Like take four was the best one. So why did you go and do 101?
Yeah, that's just frustrating.
Because that's can happen to artists. Like we can get into this perfection trap. We're looking for this perfection, and we actually are getting closer. We're getting further away from what our original intent was. The original
Mm,
intent is usually closer to the earlier takes, but something in us makes us think that we can do it better,
yeah,
and then we end up kind of wrecking the song. And I've had producers and people come back and say that you're kind of wrecking the song. He's like, you need to like, let it go, stop. you know,
yeah, doing
and
too much.
you have to have people around you that can help you see that because you might have tunnel vision and you
Yeah,
don't see.
yeah, that's like, when you're using a skill slightly in the wrong way. I remember when I was shifting kind of gears a little bit with my coaching, and I was suffering a little bit from the perfectionism and also the imposter syndrome. So I was frantically consuming so much content, whether it's books, podcasts, uh, courses, coaching programs. I was just absorbing all this information, different strategies on how to do this, this, and that. And then I got like a year into it, and I'm like, what am I doing? I've done all these different courses. I've read all these different books, but I don't have anything to show for it. And sort of similar to what you're saying there, I was just taking in all this information, but I was never actually taking action or creating something. So
Mhm.
then instead of me repeating and doing the same thing, it was time for me to pump the brakes. Kind of like you said earlier, get off the stage, get off the tour. I needed to detox from how much
Yeah.
content I was consuming, and I needed to, hey, let me do a little reflection here. What is it that I need to be doing? And that opened my eyes to a little more outbound reach. I need to start creating my own content instead of consuming other people's all the time.
Yeah, because sometimes we get in this track comparison trap, or we're trying to get into like, well, what is the best,
Right.
um, process? And a lot of times, like, if you're an artist, well, I'm not good enough, right? So in the back of your head, it's all, I'm not good enough. I'm not Bob Marley. I'm not Jimmy Page. I'm not Jimi Hendrix. I'm not this. I'm not that, right? So the
Mhm.
problem is like, well, you're you, and they're not you. So you've got an edge, but you don't believe you have an edge. But your edge, the secret sauce is who you are, and
Yeah.
how you play that instrument is probably not how anybody else plays it. You might be influenced by somebody, but you have to believe it though. Say once you actually start to believe it, then it's magic. Then other people start to believe it. Because if you believe it, then they believe it. And that's the hard part to get in because sometimes like you see these artists and they get on stage, they look like they believe it. And when they're on stage, it does look like they do. But when they get off stage, they start second guessing, third guessing, fourth guessing everything.
Mm.
It's only when they're on stage that they feel like they actually know it. And then when they're off stage, it's like, well, most of the time they're off stage. So they're not as confident as you think they are.
Do you think that's because so many individuals across different industries, they kind of fall into that, almost like fake it till you make it, or they mimic their idols too much to the point where they kind of forget who they are, and then
Yeah, you lose
they
it.
never put their own spin on things.
Well, you get this something like there's like the standard bearers. I mean, there's people that you're like, well, Hendrix, he's Hendrix. Didn't look like he was trying to be anybody else. And Freddie
Yeah.
Mercury, Freddie Mercury. It looked like he's not trying to be anybody else. But for every person that's like that, there's somebody trying to like the monkeys cloning the Beatles.
Yeah.
Like there's always somebody cloning somebody else because that's the kind of the game in the industry. A lot of the artists kind of clone other artists
Mhm.
because that's how they can get money because that's a known thing. So if you have a known property, you try to replicate the known property, like people doing the cat videos. One
Mhm.
cat
Yeah.
video gets a million things, like, I'll do another one. Right? No, you maybe even use the same music. You see it like in social media. People who suggest that you use some popular song. Well, how many people are using that song? You're all using the same thing. Like, so where's the originality in that? Like, it's popular, but what's the
Yeah.
value of everybody using the same thing for the same type of reel? Yeah, you
Yeah.
hit the algorithm, but what's the value of that post?
It's so true. It's like you're just catching the wave. You're just
Yeah,
trying, trying to,
you
trying to,
can be on a wave or you can they see it. The problem is vulnerability. Vulnerability, like the people who end up being like the Hendrix or being the Einstein or being the individual that's, Nikola Tesla, is the people who are willing to go on the limb. And they actually, what happens is people criticize them. People don't realize like the people who do the thing, they get heavily criticized. They get heavily because nobody's ever seen it before. So when they come out there, they're kind of out on a limb.
Mhm.
And that's a hard thing because like the people are kind of told to belong. It's kind of tribal. If you don't belong, you're gonna get kicked out of the tribe. You get kicked
Yeah.
out of the tribe, you're gonna die. Like, today, if you get kicked out of the group, maybe you're not gonna die, but it feels like you're gonna die. So everybody wants to do the same, do things that aren't gonna be criticized.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's crazy too, because even with today's technology and ease of communication, I feel like everyone's more distant today than they've ever been. And that plays another factor into mental health, and it's crazy how connected you can be, but so disconnected at the same time.
Yeah, because you have so many walls. They're like we're talking, but we're not physically in the same room.
Right.
Like, yeah, we're putting on our you people see an image, it's like, well, with AI, it's like, was that really him? Is that really his voice? It's like people don't know. Because you can't you like because people with the tech, you can do a lot of stuff. Like you could not be you. You could be somebody else. And
Yeah.
it allows you to do it. So people don't trust things, because they don't trust what they see. They don't trust what they hear because they don't know. And so even though we can communicate, there's so much kind of distrust of each other. And it's like it's not, you have to find a way. Well, how do you get that trust back? How do you get the connections back?
Vulnerability, if you'd ask me, I think it's that.
Yeah. I think that's the core, and I think it's a hard thing. Like a lot of people have a hard time being vulnerable.
Yeah.
I think that's that problem is like I think stagnation can happen because like you could be phoning it in, doing what's comfortable, and
Yeah.
what's comfortable could be the 80-hour week, but it's stagnating because you're really not making any progress, right?
Yeah. And everything else is kind of just like falling around you because you're so comfortable in the routine, or you're so comfortable with the same people you interact with. There's a lot of different things that lead to that stagnation.
But I think like what's the kind of concept of like resilience? Like like if you're training like somebody in sports, you get recovery time and you got your ability to like, football play, you can take the hit, do that play, you can come back up, you can run those yards and you be able to recover and come back for the next quarter. How do you teach that kind of resilience like in a non-sports context, in like, an entrepreneurial business context?
Yeah, I use the framework of the resilience matrix, and if you were to think of kind of like a graph with like the x-axis and the y-axis running vertically, I like to take that kind of graph and I bring that back to creating diamonds, because diamonds require a lot of heat and a lot of pressure. And
Mm,
then when you get that just right, they shine, they're super durable, and you've got drills that are made out of diamonds, and they help you create some of the craziest things in the world. But so, how do you create those diamonds, though? It's the right amount of pressure, the right amount of heat. And then taking that back to that matrix, when I'm training or coaching somebody who tends to be um, maybe emotional unstable, or maybe physically weak, and they can't handle a lot of the stressors that come along with entrepreneurship, it's where we take a little take a little peek into what they're going through. What are the challenges that they're choosing to go through? Because the challenges you're choosing to go to are what going to help kind of build that resilience. And going back to that diamond reference there, the pressure is, I use that as like the physical challenges. So are you somebody who chooses to be active? Are you doing different things that kind of push you physically out of your comfort zone? Are you in the gym? Are you eating new things? Are you on that scale somewhere? Um,
Mhm.
but at the same time, you could burn out from there as well. Like you could not be ready for a marathon, and you could just run out tomorrow and try to run 100 miles without training, which I do not recommend. By the way,
No,
I tried doing that, and that's
oh,
another
geez.
story maybe we can dive into later. Um, but yeah, that crushed me physically, and that was a challenge that was a little too far for me. And then the flip side of the diamond analogy is the heat. So we got the physical, and then we got the mental. So are you open to new skills? Are you open to learning new things? Are you open to challenging yourself mentally and cognitively? Some people that could be learning a new language, playing a new instrument maybe you've never played before, or just maybe just a couple puzzles on a daily basis with some friends. The important thing is figuring out where you are currently on that matrix, on the physical axis and then the mental axis, and how can you improve on that if the resiliency is a thing that you're needing to work on. And it comes through in entrepreneurship because you see a lot of stress, long hours, and you got to make tough decisions too. And that comes through with your personal resiliency. You got to be strong enough to make those decisions, strong enough to handle those ups and downs. And I imagine there's a lot of that in the music industry too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, music is a lot of it is you do it because you love it, and then if you let go the pressure of trying to like play that the young person's game, trying to hit the charts, and
Mhm.
you start to realize like I can do things that aren't related to the charts. I can work on music for you know films, background music, licensing, and people might
Mm,
not know your name. So as an ego, so you got to start looking. It's like, why are you doing it? Are you doing it for the ego of being on a top 10 list, some kind of top list, or are you doing it because you love to play? If you love to play and you show that, other people will find you and want you to work on their projects. And so, like, if you put it like I knew a bunch of guys when I'm 56, they were 17, they wanted to be like the biggest band in the world. It never happened, and they stopped. And no other artists that never stopped, and they're my age, and they still play and they find opportunities because they just never stop playing because they had a love of playing their instrument.
mm,
And then the world found opportunities for them because they just love to do it, right? And then because they never stopped, they found connections. They found people who knew that they do that and say, "Oh, well, you can go. You can join me on this tour. You can do this." You find opportunities because you weren't trying to be like this thing. You just like I just love doing what I do, and not that you don't have ambition. Right, but you find a way to like, if I love it, I'm not gonna do it so I don't love it anymore. So the
yeah.
guys that stopped, I'm like, I guess they really didn't like playing guitar because now they never pick it up. They picked it up from 17 to 21, they never picked it up again.
Yeah. And that's the whole intention behind it. So doing it for the wrong reasons, it'll lead to that burnout.
So I think like if you're a business person, I've met a lot of like entrepreneurs, like maybe their first thing didn't work, but they were kind of tenacious and they had these ideas. It's like, well, just because it didn't work doesn't mean something else won't work. And they kept on trying until iteration as they finally found the thing that worked. So it wasn't people somehow think some of them went from 0 to 100, and it was more iterative. It was more
Yeah.
like willing to actually deal with, like, the bad days and the good days and learn from them and be able to process the mistakes or the happy accidents and then actually synthesize that into a success.
Yeah. There is no such thing as an overnight success.
Yeah, it's usually a lot of work that you don't see.
Yeah, exactly. Like the iceberg.
Yeah, so there's, I think, like, this idea of intentional consumption. Can you talk about what does that mean for you, that concept?
Yeah. So for me, that's I think maybe kind of hinted at it a little bit earlier, but understanding what you're consuming more so, like because my background in strength and conditioning and nutrition, so it's always easy for me to reference back to the types of meals that you're eating and how that can transfer over into the energy to kind of fuel you through those longer days and through those challenges that you're choosing to put yourself through during the entrepreneurial world. But more than just that, it's also the media that you're consuming. So the books, the radio, the podcasts, the music, the television, even social media. And if that's not aligned with what you're intentionally trying to do, then you're going to start to program yourself in the wrong way. And that comes
Mhm.
through with lacking of motivation or the energy or even coming through in the discipline. Because if you're feeding yourself the wrong types of fuel, it's gonna your program is gonna be all out of whack, and you're gonna wake up down the road not feeling well, not having that energy, and you're just never gonna get through it because you lack that intentionality. You lack the reason why you're consuming the certain things you're consuming.
It's kind of like as a musician, sometimes we have a situation where like there's a good vibe and there's like a bad vibe. Like so you're in with a bunch of guys, and the reason you're a group is because like when you guys get together, there's this automatic like creativity, right? So if
Mhm,
you when you have a group that's like a purposely a band, right? A lot of times, most of the time when they get together, there's like this synergy or this harmony where suddenly they're in a very creative process and everything's kind of vibing. They're in like a flow state.
mhm,
And then what happens is, that usually doesn't last forever. And so then you see like the Beatles, that didn't last forever. They eventually they were out of sync. They were gone. It was done. But the Stones, they kept on going. They purposely kept. They took breaks, but they kept on saying that, you know what, we want this thing to keep going. So they kept on going. So it's kind of like their intentions. Like, what's your intention?
yeah, yeah, and it's powerful because it goes both directions. Like you just said with the Stones, like they intentionally had those downtimes. They like you'll never catch me telling anybody that they can't have a couple beers or enjoy hamburgers and hot dogs. Like for example, I just placed second in a donut eating competition like back in July. But you would never guess that I do donut eating competitions, or I got first place in a meatball eating competition once because of my background in strength and conditioning and nutrition. But I enjoy those things. I enjoy food. I enjoy sushi. I enjoy pizza, all those things. So I'll never tell you not to have those things. But
Hmm.
having the intentionality behind it. So like, okay, I'm having this pizza because I want it, or am I having this pizza because the cravings are leading me towards it?
Hmm.
Because when you have that intentionality, you have the control, and then when you have the control, or at least that intention, you can either direct yourself towards your goals or away from your goals. And the same thing with watching television and listening to music and stuff. There's times where I'm listening to all different kinds of music, or I'll check out new TV shows just to try it and experience it and bring it into my life as a new experience. But if I'm just constantly just listening to something that I don't like just because somebody else is telling me to, or if I'm just binge watching TV all day, that's not going to get me closer to where I want to go.
Yeah. The thing, yeah, can we can be consumers. I mean, the kind of world is designed for people to be consumers,
Oh yeah.
right? And then there's like people who are creative. And then with creative people, there are people who become like business owners, entrepreneurs, whatever, or athletes. There's a certain focus. Like these people, then there are people that are more like fans, you
Mhm.
know, and consumers or employees rather than employers. And that's okay because it's like people know who they are, right? So if it's like I really don't feel. You got some people, they don't want to have that responsibility of being that type of entrepreneur. If you have that kind of spirit, you kind of want. Yeah, I think that you want to be able to last like the Stones and not
Mhm.
burn out like the Beatles. I think you want to have a career path that can go multiple decades, right? And maybe you have different ideas, but you want to be able to do that. You don't want to just like do it and stop. I
Yeah.
think I think you just be done and say, "Well, I'm done." I think well, you could and say, "Well, I'm just not going to do anything like that again, and I'm done with that." I mean, I guess it's your intention.
Yeah. Yeah, and if your intention is to become more creative, you got to make sure that you're leaving time to be creative. And if you're not intentional with that your time, if you're not leaving that window to be creative, and if you're just sitting back and consuming, and just taking in all this other content, that doesn't leave room for you to create. Kind of like how I shared earlier, where I was just consuming all these different coaching practices and these
Yeah,
leadership books and these things. And I wasn't leaving any room for me to grow, to create my own things and
yeah, you have to have
get
time
my
to
own
actually.
stuff out.
Yeah, it's like what I always say was like you got an artist that's like spends all his time practicing, like doing like if you're an artist, like there's certain level that you have to do to keep on you're doing your rehearsals.
Yeah.
But how many months of rehearsals are you gonna do before you actually put that song down?
Yeah.
Right? It's like you spend 2 years rehearsing before you put a song down. It's like, well, that's not very productive, right?
Yeah.
So at some point it's like what's all this rehearsal? Where's the song? You know? And
Exactly.
in the rehearsals there's a song, but you're afraid to commit. I think there's and I've run into painters, actors that are like, oh, they give up on thing when they do something, they give up or they retreat. And it's like, well, you're like real close to it. You're like, it looks like you're there, and then suddenly you just stop. And it's like it seems like it's like a self sabotage.
Mhm.
And like you're, well, how do you get yourself out of that kind of cycle if if you're in that kind of mode? It's like, well, you're not really going to be that successful if you don't find a way to commit.
Well, that right there is another layer of self-awareness and requires that little bit of reflection. Because if you could tell yourself, "Hey, I'm doing this until it's perfect," like we were saying earlier, you can get to take 101 and it not be good enough. But if you don't have that, if you don't have that opportunity to sit back and kind of reflect or have that social support where they're like, "Dude, this is good. Like, go ahead, release that coaching program or post that." Or you gotta just go. You're spending too much time on this. If this is where you want to go, this is good right here. You can kind of change and evolve and those things down the road, but it's that taking that action, having
Yeah,
that support.
it's kind of like in business. I'm a software design, right? And there used to be this method called waterfall. A waterfall means you spend all your time kind of, hey, this one document that's perfect, could be hundreds of pages that tells everybody what to do in the project, how to design the thing. But now today we live in this world where they have this idea called agile. Now agile is iterative, which means we can have version 1.1. It's not perfect, but it's where we are. We'll release 1.1 knowing that we don't have everything. And then we will iterate and it will continually be um, released. And this is what you see like on your cell phone, right? You
Mhm.
see these apps getting updated all the time
Yeah,
because they're not perfect. They're not all the way there. They get introduced new features. So in software now we have this thing where it's like never ending agile development, iterative development. So we don't not put it out. We put it out and it might not be fully ready. It might not have all the features it's gonna have, but it gets out and eventually it gets the features over time.
yeah, that's so true. And that's it. Like you gotta you gotta have that awareness though to like know that you can kind of continue to grow and you gotta sometimes you gotta swallow your pride with the perfectionism and say, hey, is this good enough to start getting things rolling where I can kind of change it down the road? Or is this something foundational where I need to like I still need to work on this to actually get it to release?
Yeah. I mean, even in agile, there's some foundational structural things that have to be there for it to even exist. But at least in that, we're not going to keep on doing structural changes.
Yeah,
Like once we have one structure that works, even if it's not like the end game, this structure works for this version.
yeah,
So we will put that out and not mess with the structure. Right. And then maybe version two will mess with the structure, but we won't mess with it for version one. It's like once we know that works, we're gonna put it out.
yeah. Take that action, put it out there.
And that's a hard thing because I mean, when we're getting in my career, we didn't work that way. We had to get it perfect. And sometimes it would take like 2 years, 3 years to put something out. Now, we can put things out in 3 months, 6 months, a lot shorter time development. Um, and so it's just, it's, because we live in a world where people want something like quicker and
Yeah,
people need things faster. We have to respond to things. There's viruses, it's, it changes, it's like technology change. There's some things that we have to be able to move in this idea of like agile. And I think to me, I think it's like we're even though I'm in IT, I think that idea of agile seems to work in other ways, other places, right? You could apply that kind of to what you're talking about.
Yeah, definitely.
So, like when you network and there's having you know, people that have your back, right? So, from your network to your support group, like when you're an entrepreneur, how do you go about making sure that you have the right support group or the right network?
Well, again, kind of common theme is going back to that self awareness. I teach another framework, the team triangle. So think of like a giant triangle. The top, you've got your coaches. Middle layer, you've got your captains. On the bottom layer, you've got the crew or the crowd. Think of like a team or a sports analogy there. Um, and for example, when I was younger, right out of undergrad, my good friends were hanging out, buddies got together and like, hey, let's. My uncle got us tickets to the Yankees game. It's gonna be it's a Sunday night game, so there's a really good chance that we could get on TV. We should do this. And me, my two buddies were like, all right, let's go. And my one buddy whose uncle got the ticket says we should dress up. It'll increase our chances of getting on TV, and we're just young guys. We're like, yeah, let's do that. That's awesome. We'll get famous from getting on TV. So my one friend dresses in a green man suit. I dress as Santa Claus, and my other buddy dresses as a taco. And we go down, and we're taking the train to Yankee Stadium. And before we get to the game, we got to have a couple drinks. We're just young guys. We got to enjoy it. So we go to the bar, and everyone thinks we're hilarious. So people are lining up to take pictures with us, and we're like, "Wow, we're already getting famous, and we're not even at the game yet." People are buying us drinks. We're having fun. It's a great time, and we realize that it's already the fifth inning. So we're like, "Oh my god, we got to get to this. We got to get to the stadium.
Gee.
We're so late." We're like, Green Man's uncle and family are gonna kill us if they don't see us there. So like they got us as a gift. We got to get there. We were so caught up in what we were trying to do that we were scrambling to get there. And when we got to the gate, security guard's like, "No way, I'm not letting you guys in here." He's like,
So the
he's like,
whole point you didn't get because
he's
yeah.
like, "You guys can go home and change, and then you can come back." And we're like, "There's no way we're gonna do that. We're not throwing out our costumes." So we go to a different entrance. Another security guard thinks we're hilarious, so he lets us in.
Oh wow.
And as soon as we get in, Taco volunteers to buy the first round of drinks. And just as we go to cheers our drinks, the original security guard comes up and he goes, "What did I tell you, boys? I said you
Funny.
guys weren't allowed in here." He's like, "That's it. You guys are out." So we never actually made it to Green Man's family. And that was the whole purpose, really, was we wanted to get famous. We wanted to get on TV. We didn't get the opportunity to get to the stadium because we were aligned, and nothing against Green Man or Taco, but the intentions there in that social setting wasn't aligned with what we wanted to do, which was spend time
Yeah.
with Green Man's family. Flip the script. Now I'm surrounding myself with all these great plus ones, and everyone's working together. And I did this 6-week training program with a buddy of mine, and the whole purpose was to get everyone in best shape for summer, but also to socialize at the same time. And the final project of the program, we told everybody was, hey, go out, do something social, but do something active in a group setting. So we volunteered a bunch of examples of like, let's how about everybody gets together with a beach volleyball, maybe a kickball game, maybe we can run a 5K together or something like that. And this one guy in the group, he goes, how about we go skydiving? Skydiving is on my bucket list, and I was like, that's it. That's exactly what I'm doing. And we ended up going skydiving. We had a great time. Had a videographer for it, and it was awesome. But the point is, the people that I'm surrounding myself with originally was just to get everyone together to do something positive, to socialize and create an opportunity for everyone kind of better themselves. And through that experience, getting around the right people, I was actually able to check an item off my bucket list. And that's says it all right there. You just need to make sure you surround, collaborate, conquer, and commit to being together in social aspect.
I think yes, social connections is a large part of life. So many people, they're looking to to get into things, and they lose sight of society and humanity is about the social connections. It's about the like who you surround yourself with.
Mhm.
And then that's where the opportunities come from because the people are like, oh, I'm on LinkedIn and it's not working. It's like, well, what about that Rolodex of all these people you've talked to in your life? Like
Yeah.
all the people that you've ever talked to, like a lot sometimes in jobs, I was able to like just talk to a guy I'd worked with like 3 or 4 years ago, and I just asked him, did he have anything available? Because I'm a consultant. He said he did, and that was how I got my next gig. Rather than going through the algorithms and going through these like impersonal systems that are telling you you got to do this, you got to do that. It all kind of defaults back to like those social connections of people you've talked to, people you've worked with. That to me, like when you put yourself into those scenarios, then those are the people that your opportunities come from.
Yeah, yeah, and knowing your team triangle, like I was saying earlier. So having you don't have to have specific names, but having a good idea of like who are your captains, who are the coaches, who are you learning from as an individual, who are you learning from in your industry, or who you look up to as like a role model. That's who your coach is. Your captains are those individuals that you've been with and who you've gone through your own personal wars and things that you can really lean on to kind of help bring you through. Someone you can call up, and then your crew or the crowd or everybody else in your everyday life that hey maybe you're in a tough time and somebody from like the grocery store or Bible study, or maybe it's something else that isn't in your direct circle of friends, but there's someone else that's like that next level out. And just at least having that kind of framework down helps you kind of like double check on like, hey, are the people that I'm surrounding myself with really helping me elevate, or are they kind of holding me back and kind of bring me down?
Mhm. Also, like helping your fellow person, like when you like you could be like, hey, how is my friend doing from 5 years ago? I haven't talked to, and not that you're asking them for a favor, but like you're asking like, well, how are they doing, right? And so and when you have that kind of empathy, right, and you do these social connections and talk to people just to see how your neighbor's doing, see how your friend from college is doing, how the person you used to work with, how are they doing? When you start to like reach out, because like people can be so alone, you're saying, like we were
Mhm.
talking about, they're just in their own little zone, they're in their cube, they're in their little space. But when you reach out of that space and you connect, that's where humans are meant to be social. So the more we connect, the better
Yeah,
things go.
yeah. The final principle that I teach in my coaching program is about creating your own luck, and I fully believe in luck being an equation of when preparation meets opportunity. And a lot of things that I help individuals kind of build and break through certain barriers. That's a lot of preparation work. And once you get to a pretty solid level of preparedness, now it's time to start introducing and being open to opportunity. And you got to be open to having those conversations, reaching out, genuinely checking in, and showing interest in other individuals and how they're doing, because you never know when someone might be in a hard time where they might need a little help with a new job, or somebody might have the perfect opportunity for you down the road, and
Yeah.
you're not going to know unless you open up for that opportunity.
Yeah. Somebody that's like, they don't want to be the only person where they are. And then there's like, if they can bring some of their own, colleagues in, they'll make it more comfortable for them. And then suddenly there's an opportunity for you and you didn't even know it because
Mhm.
it's like they're offering you something and you weren't even looking for it. And then the
Yeah,
question is, are you going to take it? Because sometimes things come to you and it wasn't something you were planning, right?
yeah,
But then suddenly it's an open door. It's like, well, I wasn't. I'm not looking for that. So some people immediately like, well, I'm not looking for anything. I'm not even going to look at it. But what I find is like there's kind of unknown like opportunities or things that just come out of nowhere. Well, they're probably not coming out of nowhere. And when something comes to you, don't miss the boat. you know?
Yeah, too many people missing out on prime opportunities left and right, and
Yeah. So they get
it's
scared because they might be comfortable in what they're doing.
yeah,
And it's a little discomfort in something that you don't know, where like the opportunity might be scary. Somebody might say, well, why don't you come to Canada with me? I've got this awesome opportunity. You're like, well, I'm in the US. Why would I go to Canada? Right.
yeah,
And like I had I worked in Tokyo for 2 years because I
oh,
had a boss and I was working in Connecticut and he said, hey, I think you'd be really good on this cool project. Like, where is it? Oh, in Tokyo, Japan. And I'm like, so initially I'm like, why am I gonna go there? But then I started thinking about it. It's like, I really like Japanese, video games and like sushi and like all this. Like, why wouldn't I go check that out?
yeah,
Why wouldn't I do that? And I started talking to people around me, and people was like, "Oh, you can't go there. It's gonna be dangerous, earthquakes, this and that." And they would try to talk me out of it. And then I said, "You know what? I got to take that because it seems like how many times somebody gonna ask you to do something like that?"
yeah,
So I did, and I said I was there for 2 years, and it's just I still to this day, it's like, wow, that was awesome. It's like I want to sound like that again.
yeah,
That still is in my head. It's like somebody said, "Hey, you go to Dubai." It's like, why don't you go to France? It's like, why don't you, like, so if I get an opportunity, I would, because once you do that kind of expat, you become the expat, you become the immigrant.
mhm,
It's nothing like it. It's something that like it's like I don't think enough people put themselves in that kind of spot.
yeah. Well, usually it's because they're too afraid, or they lack that strength, and then it goes back to that resilience. You got to start challenging yourself, choosing your challenges, building that resilience up a little bit more. So then, when you get back to these opportunities, you can seize them instead of kind of letting them slip by.
Yeah, because life is so it can be wide open, or you could be kind of in your corner. And I think a lot of times people kind of stay in that corner or they stay in a box. But I think like it's like I think this is an age where like getting out of the box is probably going to be the thing that saves you.
Yeah, yeah,
Because with all the things that are kind of happening with AI, and robotics, and automation, and climate change, there's all these things happening. And
mhm,
so in some places there could be scarcity, but in other places there's opportunity. If you don't open up, you could be on the scarcity side, right?
yeah,
If you just want to be like it was 10 years ago or 5 years ago, you could end up being on the scarcity side, or you could be on the opportunity side.
boom, so true. Yeah, that's so true.
But so for practical strategies to maintain your energy, your clarity, and your focus, I know you've been talking about it all day, but like you kind of pin it down to maybe like three big things that could keep you in line. What are those things like you could maybe rattle off or talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I have different exercises for each of the different kind of things on building resilience, and like building that intentionality, gaining some clarity, optimization, all those things. But those are more nitpicky kind of exercises that require a little bit more work. But the easiest things that I would do is just develop some sort of a reflection practice, whether that's journaling or just at least sitting, some kind of meditating, or just spending a time with designated downtime so you can
Mhm.
reflect on how are you feeling, how are things going, how are your energy, how is your food, how's your schedule looking, how are your friends, what are your opportunities looking like, what are you giving back, all these types of things. Reflect on those, and you're going to have a lot of answers onto how you can start to improve on certain things. Like, a lot of people ask me all the time about nutrition and correct meal plans and things like that. And you don't need to have a master's in exercise science and nutrition to know which types of foods you should be eating. Chances are you have an idea of what you should and shouldn't be eating as much. It's just that you don't want to have that reflection of like, yeah, maybe ice cream 7 days a week is maybe a little much. Maybe
Maybe
I should tone
a
it back.
burger every other day is not the best thing that I should be doing.
Yeah, but hey, within reason. So, but you're gonna know what that reason is. You're gonna know what that moderation is with that reflection process. Like, hey, how's your sleep doing? You're staying up and you're getting 3 hours of sleep, and you're like, man, I can't figure out why I don't have any energy during the day, or I can't focus, or I don't even, I just feel like I'm aimlessly going with my job. I don't have my goals. What are my goals? Like, you got to spend some time reflecting, and your answers are going to show you.
So it's interesting because, like in the journaling, like I'm a big, strong believer in doing that. Being an artist, I have all kinds of journals and poetry and writing and decks of like audio stuff that I just go through.
Mhm.
It's like so I'll put something down and then I'll go back and I'll look at it. So in terms of like when you journal, I know some people journal, but do you actually tell people like you kind of got to go back through the journal for the reflection part? Like you put it down, but then you can't just put it down and don't look at it. You have to go back to it and kind of review it and then find the nuggets. Like I find a lot of nuggets when I review my lyric sheets or I review my audio tapes of like sessions where I just put something down with the band, and then we say, "Hey, an hour into it, there's the song. It's like
Mhm.
an hour and 15 minutes. The song's like right here. That's where the
Yeah.
song is. We didn't even know we had it, but we got it because we went back and we listened to
Yeah.
go find it."
You're jumping to level two in my book. The first step for me is just creating some sort of that practice, because just the act of writing slows down your brain a little bit, helps you kind of gather your thoughts. It kind of starts to structure what's going through your head. And like, I don't remember, I'm gonna butcher the quote, but the quote's something along the lines of, if you can write down your problem, it's already more than halfway solved. So if you're going through any kind of issues, or if you're going through a depressed situation, it's like writing down some things that you're grateful for, starting to kind of just start thinking about the things that are positive in your life that you do have, that you might not be so appreciative of if you didn't have. And just that simple process of slowing down and paying attention to certain things, then once you kind of get that practice down and you get it rolling, now it's time to start reflecting on it more often. I've got a whole gratitude journal. I've got a whole recap journal that I do month after month, just to kind of check and see like, hey, how are things going? And that's where now it's important for me to kind of reflect on that, because if I'm in a grind season and I'm barreling through a bunch of different things and I'm on podcasts, I'm speaking on stage, I'm doing these different things, I could just wake up and be like, geez, it's already September. Where did June and July go? And if I don't have that database to go reflect on, I'm not going to know whether or not those were good months or not, other than
Mhm.
like what's happening financially. But if it's not aligned up with me, I might not be moving the needle in the right way.
Yeah, I think it's probably like it's like art therapy. A lot of people say you do it and you don't necessarily go back and look at it. You're just doing it for the kind of process of doing it, but eventually, as artists, we end up going back through our notes.
Mhm.
We go back through our stuff because then it's like, hey, that's my resource. That's my little secret resource. I can go back and sometimes I go back 2 years ago to
Yeah.
something I was doing, and maybe it wasn't going anywhere. But now with my ears today, 2024 ears versus 2022 ears is like, oh, now I hear something. I hear something of what I did. It's like, well, that actually works now. So now I can finish it. And I've talked to authors that had the same thing. They worked on something,
Oh
some
yeah.
novel, and they went nowhere, and they put it away. They go back and they're like, oh, there it is. Now I got the idea. Now I can actually finish this. And I'm like, well, that's really cool because it seems that no matter what you're into, that can be very useful.
Oh yeah.
So if people click on that Calendly URL, it's a strategy call to like connect with you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's for like a free coaching call to kind of game plan, go through a couple of these different exercises. Most of the time, entrepreneurs and individuals have an idea of what might be kind of slowing down or what's holding them back. And on the call, we can kind of go through and really nitpick it through. Or if you just want to chat and talk and say, hey, man, what's going on with you? I'm totally open to just hearing what's going on in your situation. What are you up to? What are you working on? What kind of projects? Is there anything that I can do to kind of help, sort of thing? Um, it's just the relationship building. If it's something that my expertise can help with, so be it. If it's something that we can just kind of chat and talk and discuss and catch up, then that's where I'm at.
I want to let people know that calendly.com/ taps training /strategy underscore call. That will be fully clickable on the podcast description on all the podcast platforms that we're on. So you won't have to worry about remembering that. You'll be able to click through and actually book that Calendly invite. And we do encourage people who are listening to watching the podcast, when they see those links, to actually, want to dive into the details of what we've been talking about. That's how you connect with the people on the shows when they've offered the URL. We do encourage you to click on it and check it out and see if you want to pursue it. Because if you're into what we've been talking about, that's how you can take a further step. But again, what are your future plans for the rest of this year?
Rest of this year, I'm coming off of the crazy summer, a lot of different concerts. I just saw 50 Cent last week or 2 weeks ago. I saw Little Kim a couple of weeks back, Sublime with Rome. So we had a bunch of different concerts that we had saw, and now I'm settling into my fall season, connecting more with individuals, uh, speaking different opportunities, and running a couple more workshops, seeing if we can end this year out on a strong note. Started off very positive and productive, and looking forward to kicking it into high gear for 2025.
Yeah, I think workshops are really cool, and there's a lot of web seminars. Webinars are getting big. Being a podcaster, I'm thinking about doing some webinars on podcasting and music and different things as a follow up to my space, which I've never done before. But I'm starting to think is like maybe I need to learn from some of these all these entrepreneurs I talk to. They have these other things, but it's like this has been my thing. But like, yeah, it's like you guys are inspiring me to do some other things. So
Taking on new challenges, I like it.
that's why I think everybody should try. Like you get out of your comfort zone. It's like, well, I can do this thing. What happens if I try that thing? Like
Yeah.
that's you don't want to do the marathon if you're not ready though. But yeah, I think I want to thank you again for being a guest on the Family Electric Coach podcast. It's been great talking to you. We do encourage people to click on that Calendly link, and I hope you have a good rest of the night and the rest of the year. Wish you success, and thank you for being a guest on the Family Electric Coach podcast.
Thank you so much. This was a pleasure. Appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Have a good night.